Having grown up on a farm, I realized that if I wanted to see more of the world than a trip to the local tractor parts supply store, I was going to have to join the military. Although we weren't dirt poor, we weren't lower middle class either. My mother made my clothes and we never took vacations. Manually loading and stacking bales of hay, straw, and alfalfa occupied most of my day from age 7 on up. When I graduated high school, against our parents' wishes, my best friend and I spent 4 years in the Marines, ORA. We spent time at 2 bases stateside, but ended up being stationed in South Korea and Japan. I felt comfortable being around shorter people because I was only 5 feet 7 inches myself, short but stout. Because of the cultural differences, we were encouraged to spend most of our leave time at specific American-friendly bars and entertainment. My friend Hal and I visited as many tourist attractions as possible, knowing we'd never have another opportunity to see them again. I spent half of my money on the ladies and tried to send the other half back home. Hal had to be treated for an illness several times. I opted for the safer route of protection and was spared illnesses. We engaged in all of the extracurricular activities that interested us, including the many varied contests that my fellow Marines could dream up. By the time we were honorably discharged, everyone called me Army, even though my name is Calvin Bostic. When we returned home, Hal continued calling me Army and it stuck. The locals picked up on the moniker thinking it to be a slight to my service in the Marines. I never corrected them. In the service, I learned to ignore slights. Belford, our farming town, didn't afford many employment opportunities outside of farming or construction. I didn't want to live far from my mom and pop. I'd seen the world and wanted to settle down. Since I grew up in farming, I decided to opt for construction. I was a laborer and worked hard loading and unloading everything from bricks, blocks, sheetrock, trusses, and, of course, stud lumber. I was sent to deliver and hand-stack loads in locations where fork trucks couldn't negotiate. No stranger to hard work, I could go all day and never wear out. Sure, I'd fade at the end of the day, take a shower, and take it easy throwing back a few cold drinks with my friends. When I first met Stacy at Higgins' restaurant, it was love at first sight. She was the most attractive girl I'd ever seen, and I'd seen my fair share. I must have asked her out 30 times before she said yes. I think she did it to get me to stop asking. We hit it off famously. We got along like 2 peas in a pod. 2 more compatible people were unimaginable. She has it all: looks, personality, humor, and boy did she have curves in the right places and knew how to use them. After 9 months of steady dating, I popped the question. We were married 6 months later. Stacy and I were both 24 and couldn't be happier. We talked about starting a family, but we agreed to save up a nest egg of enough money to afford a child without putting an excessive strain on our limited incomes. By the time we paid our apartment rent and met our monthly expenses, we were nearly tapped out. Somerville, the 3rd largest city in our state, was 40 miles away from our Belford hometown. Kensington is a growing bedroom community in which many Somerville commuters lived. Kensington, only 22 miles away from Belford, was adding new businesses to serve the growing needs of its residents. One such establishment was Stokes Fitness Palace, a co-ed gym that catered to the fitness of both men and women. Army, you aren't going to believe the exciting news I heard today. Oh, are they having another sale at the dollar store? I joked. No, silly. My friend Brenda had lunch at the restaurant today, and she told me about a new fitness gym opening over in Kensington. They're interviewing potential hires for the next week or so. She was told the starting pay for the new recruits. Honey, if they hire me, I'll be making about 30% more than what I bring home in wages and tips from the restaurant. I could make close to what you bring home. Isn't that wonderful? She declared. We can start setting money aside for our family. I want us to finally have that baby we've planned on for so long. I hear what you're saying, but what do you know about fitness and gyms? Wouldn't you need some kind of degree or something? I don't know what their requirements are for any of these positions, and I'll never know unless I go for an interview. Connie said she'd come in early and cover for me so I can go to Stokes Fitness Palace for an interview, and I'll stay over a couple of hours and cover for her this evening. Brenda said she heard that they take walk-ins, no appointments necessary. Honey, I don't suppose it would hurt to find out what kind of job opportunities they're offering, and there aren't many other prospects here in Belfort. If you were to get the job, you'd have to commute the distance every workday. I wouldn't get my hopes up, but sure, give it a try. After work the next day. You aren't going to believe this, Army, but they offered me a job. At Stokes Fitness Palace in Kensington that you told me about? Yes, they're going to start me at 25% more than I'm making now, and after a 2-week performance evaluation, they'll up it to 30% more, just as Brenda said. That almost sounds too good to be true. What is it exactly that you'll be doing for them, Stacy? That's the best part, Army. They have their own in-house on the job training program. They'll teach me about all of their machines and strength training equipment. Once I'm up to speed, they'll make me a floor manager. I'll help anyone inexperienced with the equipment. They said that, over time, if I apply myself, I could become a trainer, which could add another 20% to my salary. Isn't that wonderful? Stacy excitedly declared. When do they want you to start? I told them I'd need to give at least a 1-week notice at the restaurant. I don't want to leave them in a bind. They said that would be fine with them. Are you still okay with this, Army? It looks like we'll be able to start setting more money aside now to grow our family. As soon as you think we can afford it, I want to have your baby, honey, Stacy cooed. Nothing would please me more, I assured. At first, Stacy wore conservative attire to her new job, conventional pants with colorful button tops. After a month, she purchased 5 pairs of yoga pants with matching halter tops. She said her attire needed to be reflective of the gym atmosphere. I could understand that. 3 months later, she began wearing spandex short shorts. I didn't like that because I could see her clothes were tight. She just blew me off as being overprotective and showed me pictures taken in the gym proving that all of the other girls were dressing just like her. She even started receiving cash tips from some of the guys that she helped in various ways. To calm my fears, I took off work early one day and dropped by Stokes Fitness Palace unannounced. I watched her closely for a couple of minutes before she recognized me and rushed over to greet me. She was not doing anything inappropriate or flirtatious that would cause me to worry. "Hi, baby. What are you doing here?" she enthused. "I just wanted to see where my wife works. This is a very nice facility." I'm impressed. "I'm tickled that you stopped by, Army. Come on, let me introduce you to my supervisor," she insisted. She walked me over to a big guy. "Gerald, this is my husband, Calvin Bostic. Everybody calls him Army." "Army? This is Gerald Jenkins." Everybody calls him Goliath for obvious reasons. As we shook hands, Goliath tried to intimidate me with his firm grip without being overtly obvious. He was strong as an ox, but I didn't flinch. He was easily 6 feet 2 inches 188 cm to my 5 feet 9 inches 175 cm. I knew my weight to be 175 stocky pounds, 80 kg, and estimated his to be at least 245 pounds, 111 kg of robust muscle mass. He was ripped, a perfect advertisement for the fitness center. We both smiled honestly for Stacy's sake. Someone called him away, so Stacy gave me the grand tour and explained much of their operations. I did see 2 other female coworkers who were dressed similarly to her. I'm glad I stopped by. It eased my mind considerably. Friday night, Stacy brought up a change in her schedule. "Honey, I know I don't usually work weekends, but they're having a big promotion going on at the gym tomorrow, and they need all hands on deck. There's a very special event taking place at 7 p.m. It's a special function not open to the general public, but they want all spouses to be present. I want to show you off to everyone as my husband. Will you make it a special point to be there? Please? Pretty please?" she asked, batting her eyes at me in her charming manner. "What kind of promotion, Stacy? You know I'm not going to sign up for one of their programs. I get plenty of exercise making deliveries. I promise they're not going to try to sign you up for anything." "Well, what is it then? Are you getting an award or something?" "Could be," she said evasively. "After this promotional event, we may be able to start growing our family sooner rather than later. You'll just have to come to find out. I'm not at liberty to say anything more." "Well, I reckon I'll be there then and see what the big deal is that you're talking about." That night, she tired us both out so much I could hardly move. She had already left when I woke up Saturday morning. I called my buddy Hal and spent a chunk of the day helping him work on his car. He was always doing something to it to make it cooler or faster. I told him about my conversation with Stacy about tonight's mysterious event. I shared with him that something felt off, but I couldn't put my finger on it. "Hey man," Hal began, "why don't I come with you tonight to have your back if you have any concerns? And on top of that, come on in the house and let me show you my latest gadget I won in a poker game a couple of weeks ago. It's a compact ink pen voice recorder. It records up to 70 hours on a single charge. It has a built-in USB adapter to download the recordings. A twist on the top turns it on. It writes perfectly as a pen, so no one is the wiser. A buddy of mine who lost it to me in the poker game bought it to record his girlfriend's happiness as they had fun together. I've tested it. It picks up clear audio for about 40 feet away. Wow, this is like a spy gadget. I don't think it will be needed, but it won't hurt to have it on me just in case. Thanks, Hal. The two of us showed up at the Stokes Fitness Palace a few minutes before 7. A burly man came to the door asking for ID. I showed him my driver's license, and he nodded his approval. When Hal moved to enter with me, the guy stopped him and said, "Sorry, bud. This is a closed event, and you're not invited. Only Mr. Bostic." I looked the guy in the eye and said, "No problem. Come on, Hal, let's go. If you can't get in, then I can't either. Hey, bud, be sure and tell Stacy Bostic that her husband tried as we started walking back to Hal's car. Don't leave, sir. You're a VIP guest. All right, we'll let your friend in. Come on. But I'll need to collect your cell phones before you enter. As I said, this is a private event, and no recordings or photos are allowed." We reluctantly handed him our phones, and he slid them into individual envelopes and marked them with our names. "They'll be returned to you upon leaving the premises. For your security and protection, these envelopes will remain sealed until they're returned." He locked the door behind us as we walked into the main gym. We saw 2 large tables with peg handles on top in the center of the gym with a large group of men standing around, working out, or warming up for something. Our escort asked Hal to wait in the gym while he conducted me to an office where Stacy was waiting. I nodded to Hal that I was okay. He relaxed and started wandering around the gym. We entered an office and the door was closed behind us. I saw Gerald Goliath Jenkins seated at a table across from me. Stacy was at his side wearing a dark robe of some kind. 5 other guys suddenly appeared behind me who had been waiting for my appearance. "Hey, Stacy, what's going on? Why are you in a robe and not your regular clothes?" I asked. Stacy looked nervously over at Goliath after my question, and he nodded at her before commanding, "Show him." Stacy, almost shaking, demanded, "Do you promise he won't remember a thing? Not a single thing?" "I promise it on my life, sweet pea." "Go ahead and show him." Stacy removed her robe, leaving her wearing the most revealing bikini bathing suit I had ever seen in my life. There were 3 tiny pieces of fabric barely clinging to her body by thin spaghetti straps. There was virtually nothing left to the imagination. "Stacy, I asked you to tell me what's going on. Why are you barely dressed in this room in front of all these men? Have you been cheating on me? Is this your way of rubbing it in my face?" I heatedly asked. "Army, it's not what you think." "Well, it sort of is, but it's not really. Honey, it's wonderful. After tonight, we'll finally have plenty of money to get started on our family. We won't have to wait any longer to begin having children. That's what this is all about, really. I'm doing this for us." "What are you talking about, Stacy? Put your clothes back on and let's leave this place right now. Come on." As I reached to take her hand, Goliath stood up and moved in front of her. "I'm afraid I can't allow that, Army. Stacy's here for the night. You'll get her back safe and sound tomorrow, but tonight she belongs here, and there's nothing you can do to stop it," he announced haughtily. "The hell I can't," but as I moved to grab her away, the 5 guys that were behind me quickly surrounded me and held me firmly in place. "Don't hurt him," Stacy shouted. "If so much as a hair on his head is harmed, then the deal is off." Goliath acknowledged her remark and nodded at the boys to be careful with me. "Why don't I bring you up to speed, Army? What did you do in the Army anyway?" "I was never in the Army. I served in the Marines." "I was nicknamed Army. Why the heck did they do that? Did your buddies think you weren't good enough for the Marines?" He chuckled. "Somebody better tell me what's going on here or there's going to be trouble." I yelled. Okay, Army, I hear you. Well, here's the deal. I like your little wife Stacy here quite a bit. I've been flirting heavily with her for a good while trying to get closer, but she just won't give in. I've talked to her extensively about what it would take. When she shared with me that you 2 were trying to save up to start a family, I gave it some thought and came up with an idea. I told her I could organize an arm wrestling contest. If I could get enough interest, she could split the prize money with the winner if the winner was also guaranteed a night of company with her. She rejected the idea at first, but over time began asking me questions about the amount of money I was talking about and how many contestants there might be. I knew I had her interested. Then, I just had to develop the specifics of my plan. Goliath continued, I knew she was just as interested in me as I was in her. I told her that if she worked with me, she might walk away with $20,000 and get to spend time with me. She asked me how we could do that. I asked her to make a revealing video at home alone that I could show to potential contestants to get them interested in competing both for the cash prize and time with her. The entry fee was set at $1,000. When enough people showed interest, I began setting it up. But there was still one problem. The cheating aspect still bothered her too much, so I had another idea. I asked her, what if you, Army, had the opportunity to compete as well? If you miraculously won, then she wouldn't have to provide any companionship and you two could walk away with all of the money. The slight possibility that you could interfere was enough to convince her to consider it. Goliath took a sip of water and continued. She still had the concern that you would never allow such a thing to happen without it affecting your marriage, maybe even ending it. The girl loves you, I'll give her that. So I came up with a solution for that too. After you lose and the contest is over, these 5 guys here will bring you back to this office and get you drunk. Then they'll give you a dose of ketamine, a drug used by veterinarians as anesthesia for animals. People found that it works great as a date rape drug because not only does it erase your memory for about 24 hours, but it also quickly leaves the body and can be difficult to detect with drug tests. Street names for it are Special K, Cat Valium, or Kit Kat. That's why I can tell you everything honestly without consequences, because you won't remember a single word spoken to you tonight. Nothing, nada, zip. So there are 40 men signed up to compete for the cash prize and time with your wife. I'm the strongest man in this building by far. I've let them all think they have an equal chance at winning, but they don't stand a chance. I'm going to win the 40 grand, split it with Stacy, and spend quality time with her all night long while you're getting drunk and forgetful. You'll be taken home tomorrow to sleep it off. I'll drop your wife off at your home after I simply can't continue any longer. When you eventually wake up, she'll tell you how she won $20,000 in a contest and you too can start trying for kids. You won't remember a thing, she'll have her money, and I'll have done my best to have a good time with her all night long. You just made a big mistake, Gerald, I replied. Oh yeah? What's that? He smirked. You just told these 5 guys your plan, so why would they have any interest in keeping me here now? I inquired. It's a fair question, he surmised. These 5 know better than anyone else that they stand no chance against me, so they've already been paid in full by your lovely wife here to look after you and make sure everything goes according to plan, so they will not be competing tonight. Stacy paid them? I wondered. That's right, Buddy the guy to my immediate left blurted. She gave all 5 of us good luck hugs earlier today. I really envy you, Army. Your wife really knows how to give encouragement. I'm thinking about hiring her to teach my wife how to do it as she did. He teased. Stacy gave me a small smile as I asked, is that true? Did you give all 5 of these guys encouragement before I arrived? She had the good sense to look down at the floor rather than lie to me. Sorry to disappoint you guys. I have zero interest in competing or winning anything, especially anything to do with her. You can have her. Do whatever you want with her. I'm out of here, I seethed as I tried to leave. I'm afraid we can't let you do that, Army, Goliath repeated. A deal's a deal. I promised your wife that you would arm wrestle the winner of tonight's contest for the money and her dignity. Then I promised her you'd have no memories of anything said and done tonight. The jerk has no dignity. I no longer care who she befriends, helps, or for how long. Right now, I want nothing more than to divorce the sneaky person as soon as possible. Stacy started crying at my harsh words and feelings. Pay no attention to anything he says, Stacy. Like I told you, he'll have no recollection tomorrow. He'll be your loving hubby once again. You have my word, Goliath reassured. Stacy weakly smiled at his encouragement in the wake of my hurtful threat to divorce her. Enough talking. Let's get out there and get things started, shall we? Goliath insisted. The group of 5 forcefully led me out into the gym. I looked around and couldn't see my friend Hal. Where is he? I asked. Your friend? He decided not to hang around after all. We didn't want to make him stay, so we let him leave. Sorry, one of the 5 explained. I knew Hal hadn't left willingly. They convinced him to leave. I also knew he wouldn't abandon me. I knew he must be parked somewhere nearby. He was my ride. Goliath was wearing a light jacket to hide his large muscles. He didn't want to intimidate any of the contestants and ruin their hopes of winning. He began to address the crowd. All right, everybody, this is what we've all been waiting for. All 40 of us have contributed our $1,000 entry fee and signed the rules, disclaimers. and waiver sheet. Stokes Fitness Palace will not be held responsible in the event of any injuries related to this contest. This is a double elimination competition. If you lose once, you still have another chance to compete and win the tournament. The best 2 out of 3 wins. If you have 2 losses, you're out. Now our girl, Stacy here, wants a fair and square contest. She insisted that her husband, Army, also be given an opportunity to defend her dignity. He will wait and wrestle the #1 contender. When he loses, the winner takes all. Does everyone understand and agree? All of the men nodded in agreement. Great, he continued. The winner will receive the title trophy and the $40,000 cash prize, but each of us has already agreed to split the winnings with our girl, Stacy, here. She'll receive 20 grand no matter who wins, and the winner gets an all-night celebration with her. You've all seen her video. Someone is going to have an amazing night. Everyone was cheering and expressing their excitement for the contest while Stacy moved her body in a flirty way for their enjoyment. We have 2 very distinguished gentlemen with us tonight, Mr. Justin Albright and Mr. Kevin Saunders, who are official referees for the World Arm Wrestling Federation, and they will officiate every contest tonight. They are neutral and their decision is final, not to be questioned. We have 2 arm wrestling tables with hand grips that will be running simultaneously to speed things up. The hand grips are there to give you more power and leverage. 2 matches at a time will give each man here a fair chance to win. We have a computer random name generator to pair up and set the first 20 matches. All results will be recorded, and the computer will then create the second set of pairings until we reach the final 2. If you've been eliminated from the competition, you are encouraged to stay and support your friends during their matches. The 2 arm wrestling tables were identical and designed for standing matches, not seated. They had padded elbow rests where each competitor places their elbow down to wrestle to avoid discomfort and prevent injury. The touch pads are the raised pads on opposite sides of the table that each competitor is trying to push his opponent's hand onto. A projector displayed the paired names on a screen from an overhead projector. The order was easily visible and clear for everyone. The 2 tables were approximately 10 feet 3 meters apart. Stacy stood between the tables and made a last-minute announcement. Hey guys, I wish each and every one of you the best of luck tonight. And just to show I mean business, right before you compete, if you need a little extra motivation, each of you is free to give my sleeves a little squeeze for good luck, she giggled. The guys cheered and shouted some more. The first 4 contestants took her up on her offer, but each giving her sleeves a gentle squeeze before starting their match. The referees repeated all the rules for each contest to ensure compliance. When they asked ready, each man nodded. When they said, go, it began. You never heard such sounds of effort as each man gave it his all to win against their opponent. Everyone who was not competing at the time cheered for those who were. It was an energetic scene. I sat and watched my wife in disappointment as she allowed other men to touch her, touch that I had mistakenly believed to be mine and mine alone. There was a fire burning inside me, with feelings of betrayal and humiliation at her shameless actions. With 2 matches taking place simultaneously in under 3 minutes, the first round was completed in under 30 minutes. The second round, which allowed a second chance, took another half hour. After the first hour, half of the contestants had been eliminated. The remaining 20 were soon paired up by the computer in random matches. Stacy decided to make it even more interesting for the remaining contestants. She allowed them to touch her crotch and sleeves for extra encouragement. Every single man took advantage of it. It was hard to watch her being touched and grabbed. However, she seemed to enjoy the attention and encouraged each man to participate. After 5 more matches took place over the next 15 minutes, there were 10 winners and losers. Another 15 minutes narrowed the field down to only 10 final contestants as an hour and a half had passed by this time. Excitement filled the room, fueled by competitiveness, prize money, and an anticipated night of celebration with my wife. The atmosphere was electric. I sat down in a chair at one side of the gym away from the action. Stacy kept looking my way and urging me to join, but every time she called me, I simply turned my head, ignoring her. The 5 guys never left my side. If I tried to run for the door, I knew I wouldn't have made it far. The next 30 minutes narrowed down the contestants to the semi-final pairing. Of course, all contestants hugged and playfully touched Stacy, taking advantage of every opportunity. In the end, it was Goliath versus another strong man for the semi-final match. Goliath easily won, leaving him as the opponent I would face, just like he had predicted. The referees told Goliath that he could take a 15-minute break before facing me in the final match. He dismissed their suggestion, indicating that I was insignificant to him and he didn't need time to recover. His victory was guaranteed. Goliath nodded at the 5 guys, who escorted me to the table for the final. The referees stood by to officiate the final match of the night and declare a clear winner. As I reluctantly stood across the table from this huge man, it was clear that no one in the room believed I had a chance of winning. They smirked and chuckled, knowing Stacy was Goliath's reward, and they envied the thrilling experience he would have with my wife. As I stood there, the room finally quieted down, and I began to speak. "Where is the 40 grand in prize money?" "I want to see it," I asked. "Why do you want to see it, little man?" "You don't have a chance at winning it," Goliath bragged. "That may be true," I admitted. "However, everyone here has been using my wife as motivation before their matches. I simply want to see the money for mine." "That doesn't break any rules, right?" I asked. "I guess not, little man." He nodded at one of the 5 guys, who went into the office to retrieve the locked box holding the cash. He opened it so I could see. So far, so good. "Could one of the referees quickly count it to ensure it's all there?" Goliath nodded again. "Mr. Albright, would you please do the honors?" Referee Justin Albright picked up, quickly sorted, and confirmed the total of $40,000. "Sir," I requested, "if you don't mind, I'd like it if you hold on to that until the end of the finals so it can be awarded immediately." Justin looked at Goliath, who said, "Go ahead. Your reputation is impeccable. We trust you completely." Whereupon Justin held the 2-inch thick neat stack of $100 bills close to his body for security. "Satisfied, Army?" Goliath smirked. "Completely, I verified." "Good. Enough delay. Let's get this nothing of a match over with so I can start taking your valuables." "Come here, honey. Give me another sample of that sweet candy that's going to be all mine in just a few minutes," he boasted. After he had his fill of Stacy's affections, she moved toward me to inspire me in the same way. I stopped her dead in her tracks. In a clear voice, I admonished, "Don't ever touch me again, Stacy. Maybe tomorrow? I won't remember anything that happened tonight, but I hope you never forget what I'm about to say for the rest of your life. 20 grand for a night of fun with you might make you an expensive party animal, but it makes you a party animal nonetheless. You're nothing more than a cheating person who, if I had my way, I'd divorce you right here and now. You disappoint me. Get behind me so I don't have to look at you. That way, Gerald can see his companion for inspiration, and I don't have to look at you. Just the sight of you makes me want to vomit all over your lover boy here." Stacy began sobbing loudly at my vehement words. Every person in the building became inflamed with anger at my hurtful insults toward the person they'd come to admire. As she moved behind me in compliance with my request, Goliath defended his prize for the night. "Just who the heck do you think you are? You can't talk to her like that," he commanded. "She used to be my spouse, but if I have the physical and mental capacity to correct that mistake when I leave this building, she won't be my spouse any longer. Then she can have fun with all 40 of you and have all of your babies for all I care. I used to love her, but now I hate her even more. She sure as heck won't be bearing any of my children." I raged. The room became strangely silent in bewilderment at my statements, but all sentiments were still squarely in Stacy's corner. "Enough of your big talk, little man. Put your arm up here and I'll put you in your place and shut that mouth of yours," Goliath commanded. Everyone effusively cheered Goliath's bravado, knowing he would deliver on that promise. Knowing I had no other choice, I put my comparatively small arm up on the table against the massive muscle Goliath presented me. We locked hands tightly, making sure there would be no slips or tricks. Referee Kevin Saunders revisited the rules one last time before signaling the start. I heard Stacy behind me admonish Goliath not to hurt me. If he had his way, I'm sure he would have damaged my arm. However, he knew she would be unhappy with him if any harm came to me, so he told her he'd let me think I had a chance. I was pushing for all I was worth. Our hands didn't budge. It was as if I was pushing against a piece of steel. He asked a friend to call 30 seconds, which seemed an interminable time. Then he loudly boasted, "I'm going to give you an education in muscle therapy, little man." He grinned and began pressing my hand inexorably toward the table. My hand and wrist trembled like a leaf in his grip as I resisted the downward arc with all my might. It wasn't enough. As if in slow motion, my wrist hit the padded bar as the referee called the match in Goliath's favor. The room erupted in thunderous applause at his success against the mouthy husband. I stepped away from the table for a few seconds as I did some deep breathing and swung my arms as I shook off the loss. Best 2 out of 3, I reminded as I immediately placed my arm back on the table. Goliath had a huge smile on his face. I again was pressing against him for all I was worth. I used the peg and swiveled my hips for maximum leverage against him. After about 10 seconds, he began his press down to secure his final victory. My hand shook like a leaf once more, trembling as every ounce of adrenaline fueled my strength. He had forced me about a quarter of the way down when I felt something. It was a strange sensation. It was as if he had reached the end of his tether. My arm stopped shaking and locked solidly onto its mission. I groaned out loud as I gave it my all. I was breathing heavily like a runner during a marathon. Then it happened. His hand gave quarter as my stamina relentlessly pressed against his limited reserve. An unbelieving crowd grew silent as they watched me press Goliath's hand down toward his side of the table. I could almost feel the energy draining from his body as he became weaker against the endurance my arm provided. When the referee slapped his hand acknowledging the pin, you could have heard a pin drop on the floor. The astonishment was unparalleled. He jumped back from the table in disbelief. "No," he shouted. "There's no way in heck he beat me. That was just a fluke. You're going down, boy. I'm going to defeat you. No more playing around. Let's do this," he ordered. He tossed his jacket aside and took both hands to rip his t-shirt off his torso. His muscles gleamed in the light as all the facets of his impressive abs and shoulder muscles became the envy of every person in the room. Goliath drew his arms back like the Incredible Hulk and growled out his rage at the embarrassing loss. He slammed his elbow solidly down on the table, calling me out for the final match. One of us was about to suffer his second loss and ultimate defeat. He was bound and determined for it to be me. I ignored his antics. I had seen this kind of bluster many times before. Again, I performed my deep breathing exercises to enrich the oxygen levels in my blood before accepting the big man's challenge. I wanted this next match sooner rather than later before allowing him the opportunity to build his reserve. Kevin performed his professional duties and called the start. I knew Goliath's anger would compel him to give his first effort his all to prevent a recurrence of my surprising victory. He roared out in rage, shoving my arm with all of his energy in one go. All I needed to do was keep my arm from going all the way down and wait him out. My wrist was about an inch from being pinned. My hand and wrist again shook like a leaf, trembling against his massive effort. It was all I could do to hold my own against his surge. Then I heard a voice call out from behind me. "Come on, Goliath. Take him down. Show the boy who the real man is here," Stacy urged. The crowd went wild at Stacy's boldness and excitement-filled encouragement. But Stacy didn't count on what effect her words would have on me. Enraged, my body was infused again with a fresh hit of adrenaline. Coupled with my regularly paced breathing, I gave a deep groan as a fresh burst of energy overcame the stalemate we had been in for nearly 45 seconds. Our hands slowly rose and began moving in the opposite direction. I felt his arm give once more as I solidly locked in my relentless pressure. Our hands went over the top and headed down toward putting the back of his hand in the direction it didn't want to go. He growled and twisted his body more, trying to obtain an ounce more torque from his leverage to no avail. With all the reserve I had to give, I shoved his wrist against the padded mat as Kevin announced my victory. I did it. I defeated Goliath 2 times out of 3. It was over at last. Silence filled the room as Goliath asked in astonishment, "How? How in the heck did you do that? I've never lost to anyone as small as you. I've got to know," he pleaded. "I'll answer your question if you give me your word on 2 conditions I offered." "Name it," he conceded. "Number 1, I'm handed the winnings before I give my answer, the entire 40 grand. Secondly, I want to walk out of here after my explanation under my own power with no one trying to stop me. Do I have your word?" I stipulated. Goliath nodded his assent. "Go ahead and hand over the money, Justin." He handed me the cash, and I quickly stuffed the stack of bills in my pants pocket. It required some effort, but I managed it. I want everyone here to know that Mr. Bostic has won this contest fair and square. Whether we like it or not, he is not to be touched. After he provides his explanation, he will be free to leave here unharmed, Goliath asserted. Stacy just stood there in shocked silence. Reassured, I decided to reveal the truth. All my life, I've either worked on a farm or in construction. I have dealt with heavy loads day in and day out. I've done this nearly non-stop all of my life. When I was in the Marines, I was stationed for a couple of years in Okinawa, Japan, and South Korea. We were encouraged not to mix too heavily with the locals due to cultural differences. They recommended sticking close to places friendly to the Marines. That being the case, we became very inventive in finding creative ways to pass the time with a lot of energy on the base, much like it is here tonight. Arm wrestling soon became a popular activity to relieve stress and boredom. We eventually divided ourselves into weight classes, but we were curious to see how the best of each class would fare against stronger opponents. Even after a year of arm wrestling, I hadn't lost a single match. A doctor examined me and discovered that my arms were primarily powered by endurance and stamina rather than sheer strength. Unlike those who focused on lifting heavy weights for short bursts, my muscles were built for long-lasting performance. It wasn't about being the strongest, but about outlasting my opponents. The Marines even nicknamed me Army because of my strength and reputation. Now that I've explained, I'll leave you all to do whatever you want tonight. I stood up quietly and made my way towards the door. No one moved or said a word. They were still in shock. Then Stacy called out to me. "Honey, this is amazing. Let me drive us home," she pleaded. "I'll wait outside." "Put on some regular clothes before we go home," I replied. She took my comment as encouragement. I had only said it to buy some time to escape. She hurriedly went to change back into her normal attire, while I rushed outside to find Hal. When he saw me, he flashed his lights. I knew he wouldn't abandon me. As I hurried towards his car, I noticed the group of 5 individuals scanning the parking lot for me. They started running towards me. Hal made the decision to drive away quickly. Miraculously, I managed to escape with my memories intact. "I didn't leave you alone in there," Army Hal said. A few big guys forced me out and threw my cell phone on the ground. They told me it was an exclusive event and I wasn't invited. "I waited for you all night if need be. Those guys chasing you didn't look friendly." "I knew you'd be there for me, Hal. I trusted you," I said. "I've always got your back, man, you know that. So what's the plan now, and where should I take you?" He asked. "Take me to my place," I urged. I then proceeded to tell him about everything that had happened. Hal was shocked beyond belief. He couldn't believe that Stacy would betray me like that. The drugs made the situation even worse. He shook his head at her betrayal. I mentioned that I had left my phone at the gym, but I didn't want to waste time trying to get it back. Since I didn't have it with me, Stacy wouldn't be able to contact me, which was a relief. "What do you want me to do?" Hal asked as he parked in front of my place. "Can you park behind the building? Stacy might arrive soon. If she comes alone, I'll talk to her while I pack. I'm hoping you'll let me stay at your place for a day or two until I figure things out." "Of course you can stay. You don't even need to ask. But all I have is a spare couch in my small apartment." "The couch will be perfect, Hal, thanks. If Stacy comes home alone before I leave, I'll confront her tonight and make it clear that I want a divorce. If she brings any of the thugs with her, I'll slip out the back door and escape with you to your place." "Got it," Hal said as he parked behind the building, out of sight. I had packed 2 suitcases and was closing the second one when Stacy rushed inside to see me. "Thank goodness you're here. I was so worried you'd be gone," she said. "Are you here alone, or are the 5 jerks you were with earlier nearby?" I questioned. "No one else is coming, Army," she winced. "It's just you and me." "I want to apologize for my behavior tonight. I got caught up in the excitement. My intention was to ensure we had enough money to start our family. You were incredible. You defeated Goliath and showed everyone what you're made of. You saved me from a night of debauchery, baby. Now we have the entire amount. And I'm so happy to spend the entire night with you instead of anyone else." "That's not how I remember it, Stacy. I distinctly heard you cheering for Goliath. You even said, 'Come on, Goliath. Take him down. Show the boy who the real man is here.'" She looked down at the floor for a moment. "I was just trying to play both sides." "Really? So you're saying it would be fine? I call that cheating, Stacy. You were unfaithful to our marriage and our vows. And the only reason you're not with Goliath now is that I won the arm wrestling match. Otherwise, he would have had you all night long, while the others drugged me. I can never trust you again. Divorce is the only way forward for me," I said firmly. She began sobbing uncontrollably. "No, you can't mean that. You're just upset. I won't give up on us, Army. We belong together forever. We belong apart forever. I'm glad we're separating before we started a family. Dealing with you in the child's life would be unbearable." Suddenly, there was a knock on the front door. "Why don't you go see who it is, sweetheart?" Stacy sweetly suggested. "I don't care who it is. I just want to be away from you, and this place," I stated. "Okay, I'll go see who it is," she offered sweetly. I knew exactly who it was. I was sure the 5 thugs were coming to finish what they had started, and I didn't want to stick around for that. I quietly slipped out the back door with my bags and hurried over to Hal's car. I had dodged a bullet. I spent the night on Hal's couch. He was prepared to defend his home if needed. On Sunday morning, I booked 2 relatively inexpensive round-trip flights to Las Vegas. Hal and I visited several betting venues and collected discarded betting receipts from the floor and trash cans until we had gathered almost $40,000 worth. I knew Stacy would probably try to claim her share of the winnings, so I wasn't going to let her profit from her actions. I didn't sign any agreement to split the money with her. I took Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday off work. I wanted to act quickly. I found a lawyer who could see me right away. Lincoln Price told me that the simple divorce I wanted would cost around $4,000 to $4,500. I paid him $5,000 in cash and asked for a receipt. I told him the extra payment was for his exceptional service. Money talks, and I was confident I had a skilled attorney on my side. He said he could serve Stacy with the divorce papers on Tuesday afternoon. The sooner, the better. We only had 2 credit cards in both our names, so I canceled them. Luckily, they had no outstanding balance. The money in our checking and savings accounts wasn't worth fighting over, so I left them as they were. However, I did open a new bank account in my name and asked HR to deposit my paychecks into it. I canceled my phone service too, relieving her access to me. I got a temporary burner phone until I decided what to do. Only Hal and my parents had the new number. On Tuesday, I went apartment hunting. I found an affordable place near my work. My parents offered to let me stay with them, but I wanted to be independent. They were shocked when they learned about Stacy's actions. I didn't tell them everything, just that she had been unfaithful, and I couldn't accept that. They were disappointed in her and understood my decision to leave. I asked Hal for another favor. On Wednesday, we used his pickup truck to move my belongings from my old place to my new apartment during the day, so I wouldn't have to see Stacy. I wanted all communication to go through my lawyer. Unfortunately, it didn't go as planned. She must have followed me from work one day because within 30 seconds of arriving at my new apartment, she started banging on the door. After 10 minutes of constant knocking, I finally let her in. "Whatever you want to say, Stacy, just say it and leave." "I'm about to cook dinner, and you're not invited," I said. "Why did you serve me divorce papers?" she asked. "I told you I was going to do it and why. Don't waste my time asking questions you already know the answers to. I told you why I did what I did. I did it for us. Maybe I went about it all wrong. I admit that, but never, not for 1 second, did I expect this situation to blow up in my face the way it has. Okay, thanks." "I heard what you said. Now you can leave," I urged. "Please, Army, 30 minutes. Give me 30 minutes. And if you still want me to leave after that, I will." I gave her a look of understanding as I placed a blank sheet of paper and a pen in front of her. "I'll give you your 30 minutes if you'll give me something first, as a show of good faith." "Of course, Army." "Name it," she offered. "I want the names, addresses, and relationship status of the 5 guys you spent time with. Plus, I want Goliath's home address as well as his relationship status." "You provide me that information, and you can have your 30 minutes," I tendered. I can't do that, Army," she shrank. "Anything but that. I'm afraid that you'll go after them, and it won't end well for you. I can't take the chance that you might get in trouble over this." "I see. Well, since you seem compelled to make decisions without considering my well-being, I will do the same for you. You need to leave right now, Stacy, because if you don't, I can't be responsible for your safety. I can't take the chance. Now go and don't come back," I forcefully emphasized. "But Army, go." It was clear that protecting her partners was more important than fixing our relationship because she left without saying another word, just silent tears. At least I was hopeful for a temporary break from her unrealistic expectations. Lincoln, my attorney, notified me that Stacy had hired her own legal representation, who, being friends with a judge, managed to get the judge to require that I attend a minimum of 8 couples counseling sessions with an aim toward reconciliation, even without a hearing. Lincoln was surprised that the judge would do this, but judges have a lot of power with divorce cases. We lived in a very conservative community that disliked divorce. Lincoln at least managed to arrange my choice of counselor. He recommended two who he believed would be unbiased and fair. I chose the male counselor to moderate the 90-minute sessions. At the first session, after listening to Stacy's apology for our misunderstanding and plea that nothing had taken place, she was defensive that nothing had happened, and my accusations were based upon my jealousy of the nice men who work at the gym with her. After hearing that, my part was instantly easier. Rather than call her a liar or make further accusations, I decided to take a different approach. I confessed that I had fallen out of love with her and couldn't bear the thought of spending another day with her. I told her and the counselor that I thought she needed to take better care of herself and that any children we may have had would have inherited unhealthy traits. I played the shallow card, saying that any love I once had for her had turned into dislike. She sobbed loudly at these new revelations, completely denying my feelings. Although startled, the counselor reminded Stacy about the importance of respecting my feelings. During the second session, I was asked what it was that I disliked about Stacy specifically, so she could work on improving those areas to strengthen our relationship. I told her she'd have to change her appearance completely along with changing her hair color to long flowing red. I said she has the body of a young teenager, and I feel as though she wants me to be with someone much younger. I suggested that she gain weight, and then we could talk. The counselor disagreed with my opinion and suggested that most men would appreciate Stacy's fit body. I then said that all of those other men were more than welcome to be with her. At our third session, he asked us to make a list of any positive traits or characteristics that we liked about each other. I made a joke by listing a single positive trait. She read off her long list of my good qualities, hoping to appeal to my ego. I completely ignored her compliments, and when asked to read what I had written, I told her that the only positive thing I could come up with was that she politely closes the bathroom door whenever she goes to the restroom. They both seemed upset with my rudeness. The rest of our sessions were spent with me reiterating that words cannot make me fall in love with her again. I repeatedly explained that marrying her was a mistake. When asked what kind of woman interested me, I mentioned that I had noticed a few older women that I might ask out after getting divorced. Stacy demanded that I give her the names and locations of these women. I simply stated, "You give me the list I asked for, and I'll give you mine." The following week, I received the list I had requested from her. "All right, Army, I gave you what you asked for. Now it's your turn to give me the list of women you were talking about last week." "Fair enough," I said as I sat and composed the list and handed it to her. "What on earth?" she asked in confusion. "This is a list of older women in their 60s and 70s, and not a single one is from Asia," Stacy remarked. "Did you think I said Asian?" "No, silly. I said that I had noticed several aging women that I might ask out afterward," I chuckled. "The only Asian woman I know is happily married with kids, and she wouldn't be interested in me." I received mixed looks from a perplexed Stacy. On one hand, she seemed relieved that I hadn't shown interest in another specific woman yet. On the other hand, she was upset that I had played on her insecurities to get the requested list from her. This list would save me the trouble and expense of hiring a private investigator. Then the onslaught began. Stacy must have tried to convince every friend or acquaintance I know to persuade me to give her another chance. Many of the people who approached me had been longtime friends that I'd known for years. She even convinced my parents to support her by convincing them of her sincere apology and that I should consider giving her another chance. I didn't want to lose all of my friends by cutting ties with them. Instead, I took a more subtle approach by putting on earbuds every time her name came up in conversation and turning up the volume. Without saying a word, my message was effectively conveyed repeatedly, and the incidents quickly stopped. She never convinced Hal, though. He firmly supported me. The fact that none of the names on the list had been involved in any physical attack reassured Stacy that I was starting to move on from the hurtful acts or avoid getting in trouble. However, the counseling sessions came to an end without any progress toward reconciliation. Stacy once again pleaded for forgiveness and one last chance. She delivered an emotional performance filled with tears and desperation. The counselor then asked for my final response. "Stacy, B, what you gave to those 5 jerks and that Gerald guy was something special that I had mistakenly believed was only for me. Our marriage can never recover since you showed me that my belief in your loyalty was nothing more than a fantasy. All I had was false hope. I no longer want the kind of love you have to offer. I'm sure there will be men lining up to be with you. I will not be one of them. Good luck in your search. Our marriage is over. Please accept that." I stood up from my chair and left her sobbing, without looking back. As expected, She was angry at my constant rejection. She had her attorney ask for the disclosure of all financial assets, specifically the 40 grand. She wanted half of it. Through my attorney, I provided a 5 grand receipt for his divorce services, receipts totaling $1,000 for my and Hal's trip to Las Vegas, including expenses like airfare, taxi service, and meals, as well as $34,000 worth of receipts for lost bets on that same day. The entire 40 grand was accounted for legally. She and her attorney complained that I shouldn't have spent her share, to which my attorney reminded them that the money was spent before she was served divorce papers, so the winnings were mine to do as I pleased. As a gesture of goodwill, I instructed my attorney to let her keep all the small amounts in our checking and savings accounts. It made her feel like she had gotten a small victory against me. She would never find out that I still had most of the winnings. Our divorce hearing was set for 2 weeks from now. I felt that the timing was right for my next move. Through courier services, I had copies of the audio recordings delivered to the wives of 4 of the thugs who had received favors from Stacy. The 5th guy was unmarried, but had a girlfriend. I provided details of the events of that night and asked them to think back if their guy had made arrangements to be out all night that particular night for evidentiary confirmation. The girls could confirm with Stacy if they wished her to substantiate the favors. I heard that 3 of the 5 were kicked out of the home for an indeterminate period, but no relationships were permanently severed. They convinced their partners that all they did was receive a favor and never reciprocated with Stacy in any way. It was all one-sided. I also ensured that Gerald Goliath Jenkins' wife received a copy of the unedited audio recordings as well. He was my primary target because the entire contest idea and suggestion that I be drugged and memory wiped was solely his. Apparently, he had been unfaithful twice before. The 3rd time's the charm, as they say. She'd forgiven him in the past due to their 2 small children. She wasn't about to repeat that mistake. The divorce decree of Calvin Bostic versus Stacy Bostic was finally granted. Alimony was not required because of Stacy's income at the gym. I was glad of that. Immediately after the divorce was finalized, Lincoln advised me that I can't sue the gym for reparations as they do not have a no fraternization policy. Therefore, I did the next best thing I could think of. I went to the local press and detailed my entire story from beginning to end, naming names. The specter of publicity surrounding the contest and negative opinion fallout induced Stokes Fitness Palace to relieve Goliath and Stacy of their jobs. I realized that I probably would be the cause of them throwing in together, but such things were no longer of any concern to me. As it turned out, Goliath urgently wanted to reconcile with his wife. He cares about his kids almost as much as he loves playing the field. Much like Stacy did to me, he swore to his wife that he'd not done anything yet with Stacy, though he couldn't defend against the recordings that my winning the arm wrestling contest was the only reason he hadn't. He tried to convince her that he intentionally threw the contest because he couldn't go through with it. He knew that if he had anything more to do with Stacy, his wife would never reconsider his position, so he ceased all contact with Stacy cold turkey. Stacy returned to waitressing at Higgins' restaurant. I had always been a good tipper when I frequented the establishment, and the girls would fight over where I would be seated to. I continued to tip generously when being served there. Stacy tried to talk with me a few times, but I ignored her. She soon got the message. The other girls didn't want her to drive me away as a regular customer. Hal nervously approached me one day, advising me that it was time to get out of my shell and start living again. The loss of companionship had been keenly felt if I was honest with myself. He told me that he was setting me up for a blind date this coming Saturday night. How could I refuse my best friend who had stuck with me through thick and thin? I owed him courtesy and respect and reluctantly agreed to his request this one time. Before parting, he asked me if he could borrow $1,000. Without hesitation, I agreed and offered more if he needed it. After all, he'd saved my hide that night at the gym and has provided friendship support every day since then. As I handed him the cash, I told him it was a gift and not a loan. I didn't want to receive a penny back. He gave me a funny smile as he walked away. He'd been evasive and secretive whenever I made any inquiries about the date. He asked me to show up at his house at 7 p.m. Saturday, dressed casually, where he'd greet me at the door and introduce me to my blind date. He said that his girlfriend, Melinda, was as heavily involved and excited as he was. Melinda was a great girl, and I honestly had no idea why they had not married yet. They were a perfect match if ever there was one. I put on my newest casual clothes and made the well-traveled trip to Hal's place. There were quite a few cars parked all around, but conspicuously, there was one open parking spot right in his driveway, which he waved me over to park in. We did the bro hug, and he eagerly led me into his abode. Nothing was going on in the house that I could sense, but Hal led me downstairs into his basement. I heard some shushing right before we walked into his basement pool room where he and I had spent many hours. I was shocked to see 10 or more very attractive ladies all wearing bathrobes. I recognized a few of the ladies from grade school, some of whom I had not seen in years. "Hi ladies," I nervously chimed. "Hi Army," they tried to reply in unison in smiling sing-song voices as melodically as could be. "What's going on here? Are all of you beauties my blind date?" I chuckled. The women just giggled back at me as Hal took the floor. "Not exactly, Army. I seriously doubt you could handle all of these lovelies at once," he commiserated. Melinda helped Hal with the next part. "Okay, girls, it's time for the big reveal and parade. Let's show off our confidence for the champion," she instructed. The girls, apparently having practiced before my arrival, all removed their robes and set them aside. I counted 12 beautiful women standing before me in conservative, classy one-piece swimsuits. The swimsuits were revealing enough for me to appreciate the shapes and curves of each one, yet were not provocative in any way. I was immediately impressed. This was mildly reminiscent of Stacy's unveiling to reveal her revealing micro-bikini. But these ladies were 100 times classier than Stacy had been that night. Hal began again. "Army, all of these girls are aware of what happened to you and how you embarrassed Goliath that night at the gym. So you're a kind of folk hero to them. They know that you're single now, so Melinda and I did some brainstorming and came up with what we believe is a fantastic idea. She and I handpicked every woman you see here tonight. They're all single, none of them are in a committed relationship, and each one is beautiful, as you can see. Melinda and I recruited these girls to participate in an arm wrestling competition tonight. This is more of a fun competition than a fierce one. No one here tonight is a bodybuilder or weightlifter. They're all fit and take care of themselves, but everyone here expects nothing more than to have a load of fun." Hal continued, "They're here for 3 reasons: 1, to have fun; 2, to win some cash prizes; and 3, to be your blind date for the night. The top cash prize for the overall winner is $500, second place, $200. $0, third, $70, fourth, $50, and fifth place wins $40. Everyone else placing 6th through 12th will take home $20 apiece, mainly to cover gas costs. So the total cash outlay for tonight's event is $1,000. $0 total. By the way, thank you for sponsoring this event." "That was very generous of you," Hal chuckled. I replied, "I knew you were up to something, I just had no idea what it was." Hal announced, "Okay ladies, all of you know the plan for tonight. But everything is a surprise to our friend Army, so if you'll indulge me, I'd like to explain how this will work to him. Army, this is going to be a double elimination competition, similar to the ones you're used to. We want you to start each match, and Melinda will be the referee and determine the winner. During the arm wrestling matches, the girls will have a chance to get to know you better. Once we have an overall winner, she can choose to go on a blind date with you for the night, but she doesn't have to feel obligated. Sometimes there just isn't a connection, and we don't want to pressure anyone here tonight. If the first place winner decides not to go, then the second place has a chance, and so on. Honestly, judging by how all the girls are looking at you, there won't be a problem," he chuckled. I was excited for the experience. I had played arm wrestling many times before, so this would be a fun way to secure a blind date. Nobody had any idea who would win, not even me. Hal was right, every lady was lively and attractive. I had no clue that there were so many single women in our area, so this was a pleasant surprise. A table was set up for arm wrestling next to the pool table. Hal had assigned each contestant a number and used a random number generator to choose the matches. The girls would sit on opposite sides of the table. I made sure their hands were properly linked together and held them centered between them before calling, "Go." Melinda and Hal were right. This was a blast. It was all in good fun, and even the losers were laughing and enjoying each other's company. Each of the girls asked me for a friendly hug for good luck, and I happily obliged. The winner was determined in less than 30 minutes. Bobby Sue Baker won the $500 top prize. Bobby Sue looked remarkably like Hannah Jeter, the actress. Seeing her in her modest one-piece swimsuit was a delight. After receiving her plastic trophy and cash prize, she nervously looked over at me. "Well, Army, I've never asked a guy out on a date before, so this is new territory for me. I would be honored to be your blind date tonight if you're up for it," she said. "I gratefully accept your generous offer, Bobby Sue. I'm looking forward to getting to know you better. She smiled and gave me a friendly hug. Let me change out of this swimsuit real quick, and then we can go wherever you want. Hal and Melinda speak very highly of you, and that's good enough for me. While Bobby Sue was changing, 7 other girls approached me, reminded me of their names, gave me a card with their contact information, and told me to reach out if things didn't work out with Bobby Sue. I treated Bobby Sue to a nice dinner and a movie for our first date, while the other girls had a party with Hal and Melinda playing pool. As you might guess, Bobby Sue and I hit it off right away. She filled the void where Stacy used to be. Over time, we had many conversations about trust. Bobby Sue had been cheated on by her previous boyfriend as well, so we both understood the pain of infidelity and betrayal. Bobby Sue Baker became Bobby Sue Bostic. She worked as a stenographer at our local courthouse and was widely respected. Since I still had most of my winnings from the competition, we decided not to wait to start a family. Within 5 years, we had a daughter and a son. We continued to go to Higgins Restaurant, and Stacy continued to work as a waitress there. I could see tears well up in her eyes as she watched our loving family, wishing it could have been hers.